Welcome back. Qatar is holding an emergency Arab summit in Doha on Friday. Egypt and Saudi Arabia have appeared to shun the proposal, suggesting that Arab nations discuss the Gaza situation during an economic summit scheduled for next week in Kuwait. Meanwhile, there's some division amongst Arab nations over the tools that should be used to end the war on Gaza. Some believe Israel may continue the current offensive until the new U.S. administration takes office in Washington, D.C. next week, as they feel Barack Obama is unlikely to continue to turn a blind eye to the conflict. Others believe they should not count on this possibility. Observers also say that it's not necessarily realistic to expect groundbreaking diplomatic developments out of any Arab summit under the current circumstances. Well, still with us are our guests in Cairo, Hassan Issa, in Beirut, Alastair Crooke, and in Amman, Jawad Al Hamad. Jawad Al Hamad, I'll put this point to you. Why haven't Arab countries done more to condemn Israel's actions?
They already did. I think all our countries has condemned the Israeli aggression against Palestinians in Gaza Strip, and most of them saying that this is unacceptable at all, and they are asking Israel to withdraw from Gaza, stop its war against civilians, and many of them has raised their concerns about the casualties in the innocent civilians, which have raised up to 6,000 killed and injured up till now, and using also abandoned weapons by Israelis against Palestinians, even some chemical weapons also, as has been mentioned today.
But there has actually been a lack of a solid, unified Arab response. Hassan Issa, what more could the Arab countries do, whether we're talking about expelling Israeli ambassadors or representatives from the country, whether they take the 2002 peace initiative, the Land for Peace initiative, off the table, or whether they stop trading with Israel? There are currently 12 Arab countries trading with Israel. They could take practical measures so that Israel takes their condemnation seriously.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, Arab countries can stop right now trading with Israel as a means of pressure, as a means of showing that the Arabs mean business. But expelling ambassadors is, in my opinion, I mean, after my diplomatic career, I believe that expelling the ambassador is just the last step before waging war. I don't think we have reached that stage.
We've already seen
we prefer
war
to
in an Arab territory.
No. I mean, as a diplomatic procedure, if you expel the ambassador, that is usually regarded as the last step before waging war. So it is not much. As a matter of fact, expelling the ambassador, we tried it before and they tried it before, and it hasn't been that effective. We'd rather have the ambassador and our ambassador there, and we keep our contacts and we keep pressuring through both of them.
But Alastair Crooke, by tolerating what is happening in Gaza, I know there have been words of condemnation, but there hasn't been much beyond that in terms of practical action. By tolerating what is happening for the sake of, many argue, for the sake of relations, diplomatic, political, economic relations with Israel and the US, could that not put many Arab countries in a position of weakness in the long run?
Well, I think what they need to do, primarily, you say, what should they do at the Arab summit? And the first thing they can do is actually to support the Palestinians and to support Hamas in its difficulties. I'm really quite shocked to hear people speak about the tunnels as if it's a reprehensible act by the Palestinians to have built these tunnels. But if you lock up 1.5 million Palestinians in an open-air prison and then begin to starve them and reduce the electricity and the cooking gas and everything else, any prisoner will start to try and dig his way out of that. It's directly related to the siege that has taken place. I think the truth is the Arabs.
Well, let me put that point to Hassan Issa then. Why doesn't Egypt open the Rafah border crossing to allow Gaza civilians out and aid medical workers in?
Well, you realize that there is the 2005 agreement over the crossings. This defines a sort of a situation for the Rafah crossing that requires the presence of the Palestinian Authority and the European observers.
Okay, but that's never going to happen
monitoring.
at this point in time. We have a humanitarian disaster here.
That is why we have it open right now, because of the humanitarian disaster. And we have been opening it even before the humanitarian disaster. As a matter of fact, when they required from us to open the borders for having the Hajj, the ladies and the men, they want to go to Mecca to Hajj, we opened it for 4 days and Hamas stopped them from crossing.
Clearly it's not enough, because it is a dire situation.
We opened the borders. It is open now. It has been open ever since this atrocity started in Gaza. We realized that there is a humanitarian situation in Gaza. We realize it and we cope with it. We always coped with it. And whenever they had problems in Gaza, we opened the borders.
All right, well, I want to move on to a different point now. Jawad Al Hamad, Qatar has called for an emergency Arab summit. Saudi Arabia and Egypt don't seem too keen on that. Why?
I think up till now, Egypt did not take the proper position towards the Palestinians in Gaza. It is unfortunate that our brothers in Egypt talking about opening a crossing between Egypt and Gaza, Palestinian Gaza also. It should be fully opened. The influx of humanitarian aid should be going freely to Gaza with no restrictions. But unfortunately, this is not happening. And some people talking about a few hours and a few days of opening and closing, which is ridiculous to talk about it within this crisis and this catastrophe being in Gaza, as you mentioned before. Secondly, I think Egypt and Saudi Arabia did not understand very well the confrontation being now between the resistance forces of Palestinians against the Israeli army. Israel has failed totally militarily, and it's now looking for some sort of corridor, political corridor, to get out of Gaza. But unfortunately, Arabs are not helping very much, especially Saudi Arabia and Egypt, not helping very much Palestinians to reach
let me put some of those points then to Alastair Crooke.
Now.
Given the situation with the Rafah border crossing and diplomatic developments as well, an Egyptian proposal that doesn't seem at all acceptable to Hamas, and Egypt's refusal, or at least their reluctance, to attend an Arab summit called by Qatar. Is Egypt perceived as an honest broker in all of this?
Well, I think that there is a problem because, in a sense, I think there is another agenda before the Israeli agenda. And it would indeed be a paradox if we can't reach a ceasefire because there are other agendas that are intruding into it. And in fact, it's, I think, almost to the state where we are having a mediation between the mediators, if you like, between Turkey and Egypt in order to try and reach a solution. And this is happening really at a time when we do see signs that Israel is actually looking for a way out. I think all the propaganda that we're seeing and the talking up of their successes does indicate that there are people in Israel that are wanting to get out of this, particularly as Obama's inauguration is now only a few days away.
Well, Hassan Issa, Alastair Crooke seems to suggest that Egypt doesn't have the ability to put the interests of the Palestinians over their own. Is it perhaps time for someone else to step in and have a go at bringing the two sides to the table, because time is ticking away and the longer it goes on for, the more people die?
Anybody who wants to butt in is most welcomed. They told us that the Turks want to move in and mediate between the Palestinians and mediate a ceasefire. We said most welcome. We welcomed any effort that adds to all the efforts for a complete ceasefire.
But why then does Egypt not want to attend the summit in Doha?
Very simple, because we believe that a summit in Doha would be more frustrating for the Arabs and for the streets, for the Arab street, for the Arab populace, because there is no proper preparation. Right now, there are bilateral differences between some Arab countries and each other, like Saudi Arabia and Syria, like Syria and Iraq and Yemen, and so on. We cannot have a summit, an Arab summit, in an atmosphere like this. It would be counterproductive. That is why, in realization that now there is the shift between Bush and Obama, now that there are the Israeli elections, now that there is a European stance that is deciding what to do, whether to follow the Americans or have its own point of view, within all that atmosphere, you want to hold an Arab summit?
I just want one quick final word from Alastair Crooke. Even if the Arab countries were to come together and take action, in the end, how much difference would it make?
I think it would make quite a lot of difference. I mean, it's not such a complicated problem. Open the crossings and stop the rockets is the basis of it.
OK, well, gentlemen, thanks very much indeed for joining us in Cairo. Hassan Issa, former Egyptian ambassador to Israel in Beirut, Alastair Crooke, former European mediator in the Middle East, and in Amman, Jawad Al Hamad, director of the Middle East Studies Centre. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments, suggestions, your ideas. Email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.